Hello. Well, today is the day. Lesson 1 of learning to program with Python, specifically Python 3. I'm going to start this with the very basics of learning. You need a learning environment. Now, Google does offer the Collaboratory, which is an excellent way of learning. It's a teacher's paradise, really. It is one of the best resources for learning you can actually get. It has a very interactive environment and a large number of examples you can learn from, which is why I absolutely hate it. It is so well done that it actually is pretty much the same kind of environment that you would get in a university. That is the problem. It provides so much for you that, from my experience of 42 years of programming, you get used to the environment as much as you do the language, to the point that you begin to interconnect the two, so that when you go into a different environment, like a VPS, to deploy whatever it is you are working on, you are no longer able to function. You lose the ability to actually do the programming. So while it's great to look at, it's free, I don't like it. I believe the best way to learn to program is the very minimal aspects of programming. The Python 3 interpreter and a simple text editor. Once you understand the language completely as itself, separate of the environment, then learning any environment becomes easier because you're not dependent upon the environment to learn the language. That also holds true with learning the language itself. You're trying to learn the language, not the environment. So if you end up trying to learn both at once, it confuses the separation between language and environment. And this holds true for any programming language, not just Python. That was actually one of the biggest mistakes when I took my formal training 42 years ago. The environment was perfect. It highlighted the errors. It made it easy to see what I did wrong. And then I got out into the real world where I went to work for a shop programming, and they had nothing. All I got was a crappy text editor that barely functioned. In fact, it was just strictly a line editor, one line at a time with line numbers. So if I needed to edit something, I had to type in a command like edit and then a number, so that it would let me edit the line I wanted, which was literally just retyping the entire line. While times have changed, the basic reality of programming hasn't. The language is not the environment, and the environment is not the language. I'm not going to discourage anyone from wanting to use the Collaboratory because it is wonderful. But I am going to caution that if you become dependent upon it, it will hurt your ability to learn languages in the future. It will hurt your ability to migrate from this environment to a real working environment, whether it is some kind of programming job or your own VPS. And eventually, throughout what I'm going to teach you, you will need your own VPS because you will be deploying a live trading bot that will hopefully make you money. And the one thing that is critical, if you use a platform like this, your API keys, your passwords, anything that you have involved with your trading becomes subject to being out of your control. If you have your own VPS, you are the only one controlling it, so it adds to your security. From the standpoint of automated trading, a lot of the niceties that a platform like this offers is worthless, because the whole point of the program is to run by itself in the deepest, darkest crevasses of whatever server you're running on. No output, no human coddling, nothing. Just it and numbers. So it offers very little in terms of our end goal of an automated system. But it's still something that is a valuable tool and shouldn't be discounted. Just use it cautiously, judiciously, and wisely. But the reality is, when you get into the real world, and as Albert Einstein said, never memorize what you can look up. And that's exactly what I've done here with Google. I've looked up online Python 3 interpreters, because this is where we're really going to start. Short, sweet, and simple. Very basic, no-brainer, no software, no expenses, just something where you can type in code and learn the beginning steps of what Python 3 is. So as you can see, online Python 3 interpreter, and it gives you a large list of options to explore. Part of programming is setting up your environment. So while we aren't actually programming yet, there's a lot of information here to bookmark and go back and read later. And I picked a couple of good examples that I will go through in terms of actual functionality. So let's go to the first choice I picked. Here it is, very simple. This is actually the very first program you will ever learn in any programming language. These two lines are critical for every language on the planet. The first line is some kind of a comment, some kind of a note to you. Python 3 uses the number sign or hash sign, whatever you want to call it. So anything that has the hash as the first character is ignored by the system. Comments are critical as they help you make your code readable. They do nothing for the machine. This is just strictly for you. If you've been working on a project for 6 months or a year, these comments are invaluable because they can help you go back to older sections of the program and quickly catch up to what you were thinking at the point that you wrote that section. Do not, under any circumstances, skimp in the amount of information you put in your comments. The more information you put, the better your program will be, both now and in the future, especially if it grows and it becomes a large project. So line 1 is absolute. The hello world is the first step and the first part of any program. Comment and tell the world what you're thinking. And it's very easy. Here the example is that. You just enter a line, hashtag, Type in your comment and you're good to go. Nice, simple, short, and sweet. Now this particular site lets you log in for it and save your projects, so forth. So it's a way of being able to have a Python environment without necessarily spending a large amount of time making the environment or actually renting a VPS. So here you have it. First program, easy. Now let's go to line 3. In Python, the print command is a special command that lets you send output to the screen or to some kind of a monitor. The parentheses are required, as this tells the print command that what's in between the parentheses is what you actually want it to display. The quotations are a way of telling Python that what you have is a string of characters or text. Okay, let's get rid of this one and go to the next one. Same thing, another IDE, and this shows a different way of doing comments in Python. This is a more advanced way, but it shows you how to put large amounts of comments easily without having to put the hash mark in the front of each line. Either way is up to you. I personally prefer the hash mark, but a lot of people like this method as it is more free-formed. And again, very simple, hello world approach. The print command, the parentheses telling it what you want it to display, and the actual text you want to display. Oops. Get rid of the collab, and now we're going to go to the actual program I'm going to use for the bulk of this video. The one that I feel is the best. It's simple, it's easy. Same thing, you see the hashtag, the comment, the print command, hello world. What I like about this particular one is its ease. You simply click the run button and it shows you the output on the same screen as the actual code. So we have our 2 comments. Let's actually go through and highlight and delete them. And now we'll make a new one. And let's change the command. Now we can click on run again, and it changes the output. Anything you put in between the quotation marks will be displayed on the screen. That's nice and easy and simple. But we want really to go beyond that. After all, our goal is to build an automated trading bot. Well, that's not going to happen right away because there's a lot of steps between here and there. There's a lot of things that we will need to understand and develop. So for that, we start with, now that we know what a string of characters is, or simply a string, and we know how to put that string onto a screen that we can read. Now we can begin taking the next step. And that is, how do we tell the computer what to remember? For example, we're going to be working with numbers like closing price, opening price, bid, ask. We're going to need to calculate spreads. Well, that starts all here at the very basic level. Now, just because my name is Bob doesn't mean everybody else's name is Bob. So we need a way of having the program ask who it's talking to. For that, we need a way for the program to remember that information that it gets from the user. That is a variable. A variable is simply a box in the computer's memory that information is stored in. And that is done like this. In this case, the variable A, and the number I want it to remember is 5. That's not a good example though, because it doesn't mean anything. Your variables should always start with a letter, and they should be meaningful. In Python though, letters are case sensitive. So let's say we want to get the user's name. Well, if you type name and then you type name, these two names are not the same. In Python, they are very different. Let's demonstrate that by asking the user what their name is. Let's get rid of this one. Now we're going to name, and now we're going to use another Python command called input. And input wants us to give it text to display on the screen. So now it's going to display what is your name. And now we don't want it to say hello Bob. We want it to say hello and whatever the computer gets from the user. So hello. Now we're going to add a comma because now we want the computer to tell us two things. And we're going to have the computer tell us what the user gave it. So let's run that. And as you can see on the right hand side, it says, what is your name? Okay, I'm going to type my name. And it says, hello, and my name. Now, let's come back over to the left side and demonstrate the difference of case. We're going to ask the user for another name. What is the name of your friend? Now we're going to do something with that second name. Okay, that's all fine and well, but we're not done. We're going to do something a little different this time. We want the computer to actually use what we gave it in a meaningful way. And for Python, that's a formatted string. So now that we've formatted the string, it's going to use what we gave it in a specific way. So let's run this script again. Now it's asking us the name of our friend. And it gave us an error. So that's what happens when things don't work right. Not to worry. We simply look for what went wrong, and it could be this interpreter won't handle what we're doing. And that's why I like a VPS. And that's exactly what it looks like. But that's not a worry. Each of these online programs has limits. This is a good thing that it breaks, because I can show you how to work around situations that break. And that's the first rule of programming. Nothing ever works the way you think it will. So we take that out. And we simply use what's called string concatenation. That is, we tell the computer we have 3 different strings. And those 3 strings we want to display at once. Now we can use the above technique with the comma, but I want you to see that the computer is much more versatile for formatting. And that becomes important as we begin moving forward and you start looking at price data that needs to be 4 or 5 decimals long exactly. Formatting can be done in a myriad of ways. And that is what this is meant to display. So let's try it again. And it worked this time. You are going to have trial and error through many things. Most often, it's simply going to be typing errors. But sometimes, a different tool that you might not be familiar with is going to have a different format for entering in certain critical functions. That is really the reality of programming. And this is why I prefer a simple text editor with the interpreter. Because I want to see the language, not the environment. Strings are wonderful. As we can see in this example, they have a myriad of interesting possibilities. And those possibilities are endless, literally. And there's so much more we can do with it. For example, let's get rid of this. Now, since our emphasis is going to be working towards a trading bot, let's start with something very simple. Most of the time when you're trading, you're dealing with a bid and ask price. So, for now, we're just going to use numbers. Eventually, we're going to get these numbers from a broker or an exchange. But for now, let's say the bid is $100.50. Let's say the ask is $99.98. Now, two numeric variables. Numeric means I want numbers. So in this case, the variable bid is 100.50. The variable ask is 99.98. Now I want the spread, or the difference between the bid and the ask. And that is simply and so now we begin to see math. And spaces or no spaces, both are the same. The program doesn't care. And it really doesn't matter except to you, or if you're in a programming environment working for a business, they'll give you a preference that they want you to use within your programs. But as far as your personal programming, it's whatever is easiest for you to recognize and understand. So now let's output wrong language. Let's output the spread. First, I want to highlight what the bid is. And that's not correct. I need a lowercase b. Now I want to highlight what the ask is. Now I want to actually print or display the bid, the spread. Okay, so now we have a simple program. Let's see if it works. And it does. And it gave me a really weird number. But that's okay, because that's what we expect at this point. Weird stuff. But this is hard-coded, or meaning the number is given in the program itself. Let's take this one step further and make the user give us the numbers. So bid equals and now let's get the ask price. Now you'll notice I'm putting an extra space at the end. Well, that's strictly for visual appearance. I want it to look nice. And that's the whole point of the program interacting with the user. It needs to look nice. So now let's run this again. Let's take a different context this time. Let's say Bitcoin, for example, or LTC, or some kind of different stock. Well, let's say the bid price is $23,005, and the asking price is $22,850. And we have an error. Why? Because we can't do math on a string. That's right, we gave the program numbers, but the computer doesn't know their numbers. So we actually have to tell the computer with a special word in the language. The word is, in this case, float. Now, a float, or a floating point number, is just a fancy way of telling the computer that it has a number with a decimal point. So now we come in and we have a float. So when the user gives the computer a number, now the computer will take what it was given and actually make sure it's converted into a number from the text the user gave. And that's exactly what that is. Text. When you type something in from the keyboard, it is pure text. You need to explicitly tell the computer when it is working with a number. So let's try this again. Okay, so let's do the same example. 2304, 22,857. Now we get what we need. Now we know that the spread is $147. Simple, easy. Not really. There's a lot of steps between learning and actually applying what we've learned. It's going to require patience, a lot of patience, because right now, just seeing what is possible opens up a whole world of your brain going wild and just wanting to jump in and run for the hills with anything and everything that you can do. The very first parts of programming are actually very frustrating, because as we continue to build on what we have, more and more possibilities become available, and subsequently more things are what you can think of doing with this knowledge. Over time, you will begin to build in stages and steps, and you will begin to understand each step of the way as you go. But for now, we have to do one thing here that we didn't do. We need to document the program. Empty lines are nothing to worry about, and they actually can help readability when used properly. Studying other people's programming code is a good way of learning. As I put in my article for the introduction of programming, you will spend 75% of your time reading other people's programming. Now, comments do nothing for the code. Nothing. That is strictly for you. Okay, now, this was an easy example. Let's take this one step further. Let's introduce another variable, Pip Size. Now you'll notice that I'm using technically two words combined as one. This is allowable and it is good practice when you want to combine things together. Now you can also use an underscore in Python to separate words. It doesn't matter, that's up to you and what you feel comfortable with as you're learning programming. But don't become fixated on style, because when you read other people's programs, you're going to see a lot of different styles. No style is wrong, unless it just makes the code completely unusable and unreadable. I personally use a mixture constantly, and this is my preferred format, but you will see in my programs that I use an underscore, especially when I am looking for something particular, and rather than typing out the same line, I'll just copy it from another program. So pip size, as defined by the market, is 0.0001. This is a floating point number, or just a fancy way of saying a number with a decimal point. So pip size is going to let us take our spread and convert that spread into pips. How many pips are in $147 if one pip is 0.0001? Let's see. So here we have spread. Now we can go through and make a new line, or we can just add a comma. And now we're going to embed the mathematics into the print. Since this is for display, it's not a problem. If you need to use this number later on, it will be a problem, and you'll need to assign it like we did spread. So it's going to be spread multiplied by pip size. That's going to tell us how many pips this spread is. Let's see. Okay, the bid price, let's do 23,005. The ask price, 22,894. And our pips is 111. Now that's not right. So what did we do wrong? Because if you study Investopedia or other places, it's the spread divided by the number of pips, not multiplied. So we fix that, and we do it again. So 23,005. Whoops. No problem. You make a mistake, repeat the process. Okay, our spread is $108 or 108,000 pips. Now that's quite a bit, but when you're looking at Bitcoin or some other large capital market item, this is what you can expect. Numbers that don't rationally make a lot of sense for certain conditions. But that's the kind of thing when you're dealing with trading that you need to think about. The kind of units you are going to use between different price points. A lot of times, those units will be in percentages just because of the size of pips being so exaggerated. Now, mathematics in Python is the same as it would be with the calculator. The star is multiplication, minus, plus, division, so forth. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Okay, for this first lesson, I'm going to end it here because I don't want you overloaded too quickly. Play with the program, see what you can do with it. Basically explore how you can use input and print. Let the error messages help you. For example, here's a good example of an error message. Let's say you forgot the comma. Now, right off the bat, it's going to give you a warning before it even runs. Syntax error. Now, this one shows you the line. Not every process or interpreter in Python is going to be this generous, but you can see the errors. So it's something to be aware of when you're working. You are going to make mistakes, whether it's simply a typo or not understanding the requirements of a command. There are going to be mistakes. It's not the end of the world. Find the mistake, understand the mistake, correct the mistake, and then move on. Run the program as many times as you need. And you will get the results you want through time, patience, and practice. Okay, this concludes lesson 1. Now, next time I will most likely be using my own VPS so I can save the lessons and upload them into GitHub for a learning repository. But this tool, or many others available, offer a wonderful way of getting your feet wet with absolutely no cost whatsoever. The first few exercises are going to be pretty well easy enough for a tool like this to work. If you do decide to go to your own VPS, don't put a lot of money into it. There are services that will let you have a complete online environment for $5 a month. So if you can't beat that with a VPS, it's not worth your time or money. Keep your money to a minimum. Eventually, though, you will need your own VPS because the trading program will have to run all the time if you want it to trade consistently. Like, share, comment. Let's help this grow and develop, and let's make money together by seeing what really happens behind the programming. Until next time.